Doctor, Doctor, I keep thinking I am something else. A Guide to Identity and Awareness. By David Rousseau. What if most human suffering doesn't come from life itself, but from a misunderstanding about who is experiencing it? Not as theory, but as something happening in real time, in your own mind right now. People constantly describe themselves in unusual ways. I am overwhelmed. I am broken. I am stuck. I am not myself. But what exactly is this I that these thoughts are referring to? Who is aware of these thoughts about me appearing in the first place? What are you? When everything you can think about yourself is just something appearing in awareness. Introduction. Welcome to Doctor. Doctor, I keep thinking I am something else. This is a guided inquiry into the nature of identity, thought, and awareness presented through clinical dialogue. The setting of a clinic is not literal. It is a structured framework used to observe something very ordinary and immediate: how human beings construct a sense of I through thinking. Inside this clinic, patients arrive with unusual but familiar claims. I am overwhelmed. I am broken. I am not myself. I feel like I am something else entirely. These statements are not treated as pathology or metaphor to be corrected. Instead, they are treated as entry points for inquiry. The role of the doctor is not to diagnose or provide solutions in a conventional sense. The doctor functions as a pointer redirecting attention away from conceptual identity and toward direct experience. At the center of this inquiry is a simple question: what is it that is aware of all of these thoughts, feelings, and identities appearing, not as philosophy, not as belief, but as something you can check directly in your own experience? Because everything you can describe about yourself, your personality, history, emotions, and roles appears in awareness. The question is not what these things are. The question is, what are you, prior to identifying with them? This is not an idea to accept. It is an invitation to look. Chapter 1. The clinic opens. The first identification. The clinic does not function like a hospital in the usual sense. There are no emergency cases, no visible urgency, no attempt to classify people as sick or well. Instead, it operates as a space for observation. People arrive not because something is medically wrong with them, but because something in their experience has become difficult to ignore. A persistent sense of I, a sense that this I is something specific, definable, and somehow separate from everything else happening. The clinic exists to examine that assumption directly, not through belief, not through theory, but through careful attention to experience itself. The doctor sits in a quiet room. There are no instruments that measure the body, no charts that define personality, only questions that redirect attention back toward what is already happening. The door opens. A patient enters. They sit down as if they have already been thinking about what to say for a long time. After a pause, they speak. Doctor, I think I am an apple. The doctor does not react. Not because the statement is unusual, but because it is structurally familiar in a deeper way. The doctor simply repeats it. You think you are an apple? Yes, the patient says. I feel like I have a core, something central that everything is built around. People look at me, but they only see the surface. I feel like I am something solid, defined. The doctor listens without interruption, then asks a simple question. When you are not thinking that thought, I am an apple, what is present here? The patient pauses. I don't know. Just me, I guess. The doctor nods slightly. And this me, is it an apple? Silence follows. Not because the question is difficult, but because attention has shifted. Something subtle is now being noticed. The identity appears together with the thought, not before it, not after it, with it. The doctor continues. Let's look more closely. A pause. Right now, before any description appears, what is actually here? The patient searches inwardly. Just awareness. I think. The doctor does not correct the answer. Instead, simply asks, and does awareness itself take the shape of an apple? Another silence. Because something obvious, but previously unnoticed is becoming clear. An apple is something that can be thought about, but the awareness of that thought is not itself an apple. The door opens again. Another patient enters. I am the back of a car, they say immediately. The doctor turns slightly. Explain. I support everything. The patient says. I carry weight. I am always behind something else. I am useful, but unnoticed. The doctor listens. And when there is no car present, the patient hesitates. I still exist. And what exactly is that I referring to? When there is no car. Silence. The structure begins to repeat, but not as redundancy as recognition. A third patient enters. I am a calculator, they say. I process input and produce output. That is what I do. That is what I am. The doctor nods. And when no calculation is occurring, I wait, and the one who is waiting is that part of the calculation. The patient pauses. No, a quiet shift occurs in the room, because across all three cases, something consistent is being revealed. Each identity depends on being something that can be observed. An apple, a function, a role, a description. But none of them explain the one who is aware of the description appearing. The doctor finally speaks again. Notice something important. The doctor says. A pause. All of these statements describe what is happening in experience, but none of them describe what is aware of experience. Silence settles, not as conclusion, but as direct observation. The doctor continues. When you say I am an apple, that is a thought. When you say I am a function, that is a thought. And yet something here is aware of both thoughts appearing. The room becomes still, not because something new has been added, but because attention has shifted from content to the fact of knowing content at all. The first patient sits quietly now, less certain, not confused, but no longer fully convinced by the original assumption. I always thought I was something solid, they say softly. The doctor replies. That thought is also appearing. A pause. And what is aware of that thought? No answer comes, not because something is missing, but because the question is no longer pointing toward an object. It is pointing toward what is already here. The clinic remains unchanged, but something fundamental in how it is being experienced has shifted. Identity is no longer being taken as a description of what you are. It is being seen as something that appears within what you are aware of. And that distinction, once noticed, does not need to be maintained. It simply stops being overlooked. Chapter 2. The Animal Mind. I am what I feel. The next morning, the clinic feels different. Not louder, not busier, just more alive, as if the building itself is beginning to reflect the strange variety of minds passing through it. Today's patients do not arrive as objects, they arrive as creatures. The first walks in cautiously and sits down without waiting to be asked. Doctor, they say, I think I am a dog. The doctor does not react. There is no surprise left here, only attention. A dog, the doctor repeats. Yes, the patient says, loyal, protective. I understand people through feeling, not thinking. I get excited. I get anxious. I get attached. I follow instincts. I don't question it. I just am it. The doctor nods slowly. And when you are not feeling loyal, or protective, or excited, what are you then? The patient pauses. That doesn't really happen. They answer. I always feel something. There it is again. Identity built on feeling, not observation, not awareness, but emotion mistaken for essence. The next patient enters quickly, almost nervously. I am a cat, they say. The doctor looks up slightly. A cat. Yes. Independent. I come and go. I don't need anyone. I observe everything from a distance. I decide when to engage and when to disappear. I don't belong to anyone. The doctor leans back. And when you are not feeling independent, the patient hesitates. That's rare, they reply. Less certain now. The idea begins to crack, because independence is still a feeling, still a stance, still something appearing and disappearing. Another patient follows. I am a chicken, they say firmly. I get anxious easily. I react fast. I stay in groups. I avoid danger. I just know I am one. The doctor smiles faintly. And have you always felt like this? Since I was an egg. The patient says automatically. There is a pause. Then, for the first time, even the patient hears the absurdity in their own certainty. The clinic begins to reveal a pattern. These identities are not random. They are emotional translations of experience. Asterisk loyalty becomes dog. Asterisk independence becomes cat. Asterisk fear becomes chicken. Asterisk instinct becomes animal self. But beneath all of them, something is being overlooked. The awareness that knows the feeling. The doctor finally speaks. Tell me, the doctor says, when you feel loyalty. Who is aware of loyalty? The patient blinks. I I am. And when anxiety appears, who notices it? Silence. Because the question is no longer about animals. It is about the one who experiences them. One by one, more patients arrive. A goat saying they are stubborn, a horse saying they are driven, always moving, never stopping. A butterfly saying they are becoming something more beautiful, something freer than before. Each one believes they are describing a truth, but the clinic gently reveals something else. They are describing movement inside consciousness, not consciousness itself. The doctor does not correct them. There is nothing to fix, only something to notice. That feeling is not the self. Feeling is an appearance. It rises, it changes, it disappears, just like weather in the sky. And yet the sky remains untouched. As the final patient leaves, the room grows still again. But now the silence feels different than before, less like emptiness, more like recognition, because something has begun to soften in the background. Assumption that what I feel is what I am. Feelings are real, but they are not stable enough to be identity. They are passing visitors, and what remains aware of them does not take their shape. As the doctor closes the file for the day, one question lingers in the air like a quiet echo. If you are not the animal you feel like, then what is it that knows the feeling is there at all? Chapter 3E, The Metamorphosis Error. I am becoming something. By the third day, something changes in the kind of people who arrive. The early certainty is gone. These patients do not describe what they are as fixed things anymore. They describe what they are becoming. The first sits down slowly, as if trying not to interrupt a process already happening inside them. Doctor, they say, I am not who I used to be. The doctor listens. I am changing. The patient continues. I can feel it. I'm becoming someone better, more aware, more complete than before. A pause. The doctor asks gently, and right now, what are you? The patient hesitates. I am in between, they say. Not the old version anymore, not the new one yet. The answer feels reasonable, even meaningful, but something about it is unstable. The doctor does not comment yet. Instead, asks a different question. When you say I am becoming, what exactly is becoming? The patient frowns slightly. I am, they say. And is that I the same as the one you say you used to be? No, I've changed. And the one you are becoming in the future, have you met that one yet? The patient shakes their head. So the past is a memory, the doctor says, and the future is an idea. A pause, and neither of them is here. Silence, because something simple is beginning to appear. The only part that is actually present is the one saying it is in transition. Another patient enters. I am healing, they say quickly. I used to be anxious. Now I am becoming peaceful. I am leaving my old self behind. The doctor listens, and the one who was anxious, the doctor asks, where is that one now? Gone. And the one who is becoming peaceful. Here. A pause. The doctor nods slowly. So there are two selves. The doctor says, one remembered, one imagined. The patient listens carefully, but neither is actually present right now. The doctor adds, silence settles in, because the structure becomes visible. The old self exists as memory. The future self exists as projection. And the present self is assumed to be something in between them. But no one has yet located it directly. Another patient arrives. I feel like I'm evolving, they say. Like I'm on a path. I'm not who I was, but I'm not who I will be. I'm becoming something higher. The doctor looks at them quietly, and the one who is on the path, the doctor asks, can it step outside the path to confirm it is on one? The patient hesitates. I don't think so. A pause. Then how do you know there is a path at all? The doctor asks. The question is not philosophical, it is observational, because what is being called a path is only a comparison between remembered thought and imagined thought. The doctor continues gently. All of this assumes something very specific. The doctor says that there is someone inside who moves through time. A pause. But has that someone ever been found outside of thought? Silence. Because the search turns inward and finds only experiences. Asterisk a memory of who I was. Asterisk a thought about who I will be. Asterisk a feeling of who I am now. But none of them are stable enough to be called a self that moves. Another patient enters quietly. I don't feel like the same person from last year, they say. So I must be changing into someone else. The doctor responds softly, and the one who notices change. Does that one change in the same way? The patient pauses. I don't think so, they say, because something subtle is now clear. Change is being observed, but the observer is not appearing as a changing object. The doctor leans back slightly. What if, the doctor says, becoming is just a thought appearing now, about something imagined as not now? A pause. And what is actually here is only this moment of noticing. Silence, because the entire structure of identity in time begins to lose stability. Not because time is denied, but because ownership of time is questioned. The doctor continues one final time. Notice carefully. The doctor says, the past is remembered now. The future is imagined now. And even the idea of I am becoming appears now. A pause. So, where is the one who is moving through time? No answer comes. Not because it is hidden, but because it cannot be located in the way it was assumed. The room remains still, but something has quietly shifted. The sense of being a project in progress begins to loosen, not because change stops, but because the idea of a separate self-managing change is no longer clearly found. As the patient leaves, there is no resolution, only a quieter uncertainty, less identification with the story of becoming, more attention to what is actually present. And as the door closes, the question remains not as philosophy, but as direct observation. If the past is only memory appearing now, and the future is only imagination appearing now, then what exactly is the self that claims to move between them? Chapter 4. The Invisible Patient. The fourth day begins without warning signs. No dramatic entrance, no strange declarations at first. Just a patient sitting already in the chair, as if they had always been there. And yet, something about them is difficult to place, not in appearance, in presence. After a moment, they speak. Doctor, I think I am invisible. The doctor does not respond immediately, not because the statement is shocking, but because it carries a familiar weight. Invisible, the doctor repeats gently. Yes, the patient says. People don't see me, or they look through me. I speak, but it feels like nothing lands. I exist, but not fully, as if I am not registered in the world. The doctor studies them quietly, and when you say you are invisible, the doctor asks, what exactly is it that is not being seen? The patient hesitates. My presence, they reply. Me. A pause settles in the room, because this is no longer about animals, or objects, or transformation. This is about disappearance, or the fear of it. The doctor leans back slightly. Tell me, the doctor says, who is aware of being unseen. The patient frowns. I am, and that I. Is it seen by others? No, and yet it knows it is unseen. Yes, there is a quiet tension in that realization. Something here does not fully add up, because invisibility, in the ordinary sense, requires absence from perception. But here, something is clearly being perceived, the experience of being unseen. The doctor continues, when you say no one sees me, what is actually being experienced in this moment? The patient thinks carefully. Loneliness, they say. Distance, like I am not fully included in things. And is loneliness something that is seen by others, or something that is felt internally? Felt, and the one who feels loneliness, is that one invisible to itself? The question lands differently, because so far, everything the patient has called invisible has still been experienced very clearly. It is not nothing. It is something appearing, just not being mirrored in the way it expects. Another patient is called in. I don't exist properly, they say immediately. It's like I'm here, but not really here. Like I don't take up space in people's minds. The doctor listens. And yet, the doctor replies, you are here enough to notice that. The patient pauses. That simple fact has been overlooked. To notice absence requires presence. To feel invisible requires awareness. The paradox begins to form gently in the room. What feels unseen is being seen, not by others, but by something closer than others could ever be. The doctor speaks more softly now. Is it possible, the doctor asks, that what you are calling invisible is not an absence of existence, but an absence of recognition? The patient looks up. Recognition? Yes, the doctor says. You are not missing from experience. You are missing from being reflected in the way you expect. Silence, because this shifts everything. The problem is no longer existence. It is identification. The mind expects a certain confirmation of self from the world. When it doesn't arrive, it concludes, I am not seen. But the deeper inquiry reveals something else entirely. The seeing is still happening. Even the feeling of invisibility is being known. The doctor stands and walks to the window. Outside, nothing unusual, but the conversation has changed the atmosphere inside the room. You are not invisible, the doctor says finally. The patient looks up quickly, as if relieved. You are unrecognized in the way you imagined you would be recognized. A pause, and yet, the doctor continues. Something here has never stopped being aware of everything that is happening. The patient sits quietly, because that is harder to deny. Not the story of being unseen, but the fact that even that story is being witnessed. The doctor returns to the desk. Invisibility, the doctor says gently, is often just the mind looking for itself in the wrong place. The room grows still again, but this stillness is different now. Less like absence, more like presence without object. As the patient leaves, they do not look fully convinced, but something has loosened, not the situation outside, but the certainty inside. And as the door closes, one question remains, almost hanging in midair. If you are the one who can notice being invisible, then what exactly could ever truly hide you? Chapter 5. The Split Mind Clinic. I am to people. By the 5th day, the clinic changes in tone. The earlier confusion about objects, feelings, and becoming has quieted. What arrives now is something more personal, more immediate. Conflict. The first patient sits down slowly, as if already in negotiation with themselves. Doctor, they say, I think there are two of me. The doctor listens without interruption. One part of me wants to change. The patient continues. The other part doesn't. One part knows what is right. The other keeps doing the opposite. I feel like I'm constantly divided. A pause. The doctor asks calmly, and when these two parts argue, what is aware of the argument? The patient frowns slightly. I am, they reply. The answer comes quickly, but something in it is not examined yet. The doctor continues, and is that I one of the voices, or the one noticing both voices? A silence follows, because the question does not fit inside the conflict itself. It points to something outside the structure of conflict. Another patient enters. I have two minds, they say immediately. One is confident, the other is insecure. They keep interrupting each other. I don't know which one is real. The doctor nods, and the one who sees both confidence and insecurity. The doctor asks, what is its state? The patient hesitates. I don't know, they say. A pause, because neither confidence nor insecurity can fully describe the one who notices both. The doctor continues gently. If you can describe both voices, the doctor says, then neither of them is doing the describing. Silence. Something subtle begins to separate in attention, not two identities, but two levels of experience. Asterisk, what is being thought? Asterisk, and what is aware of thought? Another patient arrives, visibly frustrated. My mind won't stop arguing with itself, they say. One thought says do this, another says do the opposite. I feel trapped between them. The doctor looks at them, and the one who feels trapped. The doctor asks, which side is it on? The patient opens their mouth, then stops, because neither option fits cleanly. To feel trapped is not the same as either voice. It is the noticing of a struggle between them. The doctor speaks softly. What if neither voice is you? The doctor says. A pause. What if both are simply appearing in something that does not argue? Silence, because that possibility changes the entire structure of the problem. Another patient enters. It feels like I'm constantly split, they say. One moment I want something, the next moment I resist it. I can't trust myself. The doctor responds gently. And who is it that knows both wanting and resisting? The patient hesitates. I do. And does that knowing ever split in the same way? No answer comes, because something is becoming clear. The split exists in content, not in awareness of content. The doctor leans back slightly. All conflict requires two things, the doctor says, opposing positions, and something that can hold both in the same space. A pause. But that holding space is not itself divided. Silence settles in, because attention shifts from the struggle itself to the fact that the struggle is being known. Another patient speaks more quietly now. It feels like there are two versions of me, they say, and I don't know which one is real. The doctor replies softly, "What if neither is?" A pause. What if both are just appearances in something that is not a version at all? The room grows still, because the question does not resolve the conflict. It removes the assumption that there is an entity who owns it. The doctor continues one final time. When a thought says I want, and another says I don't, the doctor says, both are known. A pause. But the knowing itself does not take sides. Silence, not as resolution, but as a simple fact becoming noticeable. The conflict does not disappear, but its authority begins to weaken. As the patient leaves, nothing has been solved in the ordinary sense. No decision has been made, no side has won, and yet something is less gripping than before. Not the voices, but the belief that they define who is here. And as the door closes, a quiet question remains not as theory, but as direct observation. If both sides of the mind are seen, then what exactly is the one that is never on either side? Chapter 6. The Body Confusion Ward. I am this form. By the 6th day, the clinic feels more grounded. The patients today not speaking in metaphors about transformation or division. They are speaking about form, about the body, about shape. The first patient sits down and immediately places both hands on their knees, as if confirming their own existence. "Doctor," they say, "I think I am my body." The doctor nods once. "And what part of the body are you?" the doctor asks. The patient looks slightly confused. "All of it," they reply. "I feel it all the time. I feel pain, hunger, tiredness. I see my hands, my face in the mirror. That is me." The doctor listens carefully. "And when you feel pain in your hand," the doctor asks gently, "are you the pain? Or are you aware of the pain?" The patient pauses. "I am aware of it," they say slowly. "And the hand you see in the mirror, do you experience it directly? Or do you see it as an image?" As an image. A quiet moment settles in, because something simple is being exposed. The body is being experienced, but not as an owner of experience. The doctor leans forward slightly. "When you say I am the body," the doctor asks, "what exactly is that I referring to?" The patient opens their mouth, then stops, because the body is visible, but the I that claims it is not. Another patient enters. "I am a spoon," they say flatly. The doctor tilts their head. "A spoon. Yes. I feel used. I carry things. I am shaped for function. I am always in relation to something else. That is what I am." The doctor nods. "And when the spoon is not being used," the doctor asks, "I still feel like I exist. And that feeling, where is it experienced?" The patient hesitates. "In me," they answer. "And is that me the spoon, or the awareness of the spoon?" The question hangs, because identity has quietly shifted from form to function. But both are still being observed. Another patient arrives, adjusting their posture repeatedly. "I am small," they say. "Like a bucket? Like something that contains things. I hold emotions, memories, thoughts. I carry them." The doctor listens. "And the one carrying them," the doctor asks, "can it see what it is carrying?" "Yes." "And does what it carries ever affect the fact that it is seen?" The patient thinks, "No. It just changes what I experience." The clinic is beginning to reveal something subtle but profound. The body is not being denied. It is being recontextualized. It is not being removed from experience. It is being seen within experience. The doctor finally speaks. "Look closely," the doctor says, "and you will notice something simple." A pause. "You do not experience a body as a whole object all at once." The patient listens. "You experience sensations, images, and perceptions, and all of them appear in awareness." Silence, because this is obvious, and yet overlooked. The body is not being denied, but the assumption I am the body is being questioned. Another patient enters quietly. "I am a face," they say. "People respond to me. They judge me. They recognize me. That is who I am." The doctor responds softly, and before the face appears in a mirror, "Are you already here?" The patient stops, because the face is seen, but the seer of the face has no visible form. The doctor continues. "If the body changes over time," the doctor says, "but the awareness of the body remains constant, which one is closer to you?" No answer is given, because the question does not require philosophy, only observation. The room grows quieter than before, not empty, but less fixed. as if identity is no longer resting on shape. As the last patient leaves, the doctor looks toward the empty chair for a moment, and a simple realization sits in the silence. The body is experienced, but the experiencer is not a body, not because the body is unreal, but because it is seen, and whatever is seen cannot be what is doing the seeing. Before the day ends, one final question remains. If you are not the form you appear as, then what is it that is aware of form at all? Chapter 7. The Machine Identity Crisis. I am what I do. By the 7th day, the clinic feels more structured. Less emotional language appears now. The patients speak in terms of function, of systems, of operation. The first sits down as if responding to a prompt already running inside them. Doctor, they say, I think I am a machine. The doctor listens quietly. I process everything. The patient continues. Inputs come in events. People, thoughts and I produce outputs, reactions, decisions. That is how I work. That is what I am. A pause. The doctor asks simply, and when no input is coming in, what are you then? The patient thinks briefly. Waiting, they say. And the one who notices waiting? The doctor asks, is that also part of the machine? The patient hesitates. No. A silence follows, because something has quietly separated. Function is being described, but awareness of function is not functioning in the same way. Another patient enters. I feel like I run in cycles, they say. Work, rest, stress, recovery, over and over. Like I can't stop the pattern. The doctor nods, and when a cycle is happening, the doctor asks, are you aware of it? Yes, and when it stops, I notice the silence. A pause. So the cycles change. The doctor says, but the noticing does not change in the same way. The patient pauses. I guess not, they say. Another arrives quickly. I am like a phone, they say. I receive constant calls, messages, demands, emotions from other people. I just respond. The doctor looks at them, and when no calls are coming in, the doctor asks, does the phone stop being a phone? No. And when it is ringing, who knows it is ringing? The patient stops, because the analogy begins to break at the same point as the others. A phone does not know it is ringing, but here, something clearly does. The doctor speaks more slowly now. All of these descriptions have one thing in common. The doctor says, a pause. They describe what is happening, but not what knows what is happening. Silence. Because attention is beginning to shift away from content and toward the fact of awareness itself. Another patient enters, quieter than the others. I think something is wrong with me, they say. Like I'm not functioning properly. I'm broken. The doctor listens, and the one who knows the thought I am broken. Is that thought itself broken? The patient pauses. No, they say quietly. A silence follows, because even the idea of brokenness is being observed. And what observes it is not described by it. The doctor continues gently. Machines operate through processes. The doctor says, they begin, they run, they stop. A pause. But awareness of process does not appear as a process. Silence deepens. Comma, because something becomes obvious in a very simple way. Everything described as machine-like depends on change, sequence, and function. But the knowing of all of it does not behave like any of those things. The doctor leans back slightly. You can describe what you do, the doctor says, but not what is aware that you are doing it. A pause. And if all function stopped for a moment, the doctor adds, what would still know the absence of function? No answer comes, not because the answer is hidden, but because the question is not asking for information. It is pointing to something already present. Another patient leaves without speaking, not resolved, but less certain that they are reducible to operation. The clinic grows quiet again, and in that quiet, something becomes clear without being stated. You can observe functioning, you can observe thinking, you can observe reacting, but the observer is not itself another function inside the system. It does not run, it does not pause, it simply notices, and as the day ends, one final question remains in the space where all mechanical explanations fall short. If you are not the machine that life is happening through, then what is it that is aware of the machine at all? Chapter 8. The Emotional Weather Room. I am what I feel passing through me. By the 8th day, the clinic changes again. not in structure, not in setting, but in tone. The patients today don't speak like objects, animals, or machines. They speak like weather reports. The first sits down slowly, eyes slightly unfocused, as if watching something inside themselves move across a horizon. Doctor, they say, I think I am under the weather. The doctor nods. Under the weather. The doctor repeats. Yes. The patient continues. Some days I am sunny, clear, light. Other days I am heavy, stormy. I change without warning. I don't feel stable. I feel like weather itself. The doctor listens quietly, and when the weather changes, the doctor asks, what remains aware of the change? The patient pauses. I do. They reply slowly. And does that awareness become sunny or stormy? No. It just notices it. A silence settles in, because something very simple has been exposed. Weather changes, but the sky does not complain. Another patient enters, almost apologetically. I am an umbrella, they say. I protect myself. I open when things get too much. I close when I feel safe. I adjust constantly to whatever is happening around me. The doctor tilts their head slightly, and when the umbrella is closed, the doctor asks, is it still an umbrella? Yes. And when it is open? Yes. And in both states. Who knows the difference? The patient hesitates. I guess I do. The doctor nods. So, you are aware of both open and closed? Yes. And are you open or closed right now? The patient stops. Because something shifts. They are neither. They are the knowing of both. Another patient arrives quickly. I keep changing moods, they say. One moment I am calm. The next I am anxious. Then I am angry. Then I feel nothing at all. I don't know what I am anymore. The doctor listens. And which of those moods, the doctor asks gently, is aware of all the others? The patient looks confused. None of them, they say. They just happen. And you are aware they happen? Yes. A pause. Because this creates a gap that cannot be ignored. Moods appear in awareness, but none of them are the awareness itself. The doctor speaks softly. What if? The doctor says, you are not the weather, but the space in which weather appears. The patient frowns. That sounds nice, they say, but I still feel like I am the storm. The doctor nods. Of course you do. The doctor replies. A storm fills the entire sky when it is happening. A pause. But does it ever actually harm the sky? Silence. Because the storm is intense. But it is not separate from the sky. Another patient enters, quieter than the rest. I am overwhelmed, they say. Everything feels like too much. Thoughts, feelings, memories, it's all happening at once. The doctor looks at them calmly, and the one who knows it is too much. The doctor asks, is that also too much? The patient stops, because awareness does not seem to overflow. It simply notices overflow. The clinic begins to reveal something subtle. Emotions are not stable identities. They are movements, like clouds, like wind, like passing light. And yet something remains constant through all of it. Not unchanged in content, but unchanged in presence. The doctor leans back. Emotions are real, the doctor says gently, but they are not permanent enough to define what you are. A pause. They are weather. The doctor continues. And weather is always changing. The room grows quiet again, not empty, but spacious, because something has loosened. The belief that I am what I feel right now. As the last patient leaves, a soft stillness remains, not the absence of feeling, but the recognition that feeling is not ownership. It arrives, it moves, it passes, and something here is always aware of its movement. Before the day ends, one question remains like a fading echo in the sky. If you are not the weather you are experiencing, then what is it that never stops noticing the sky? Chapter 9, The Thought Identity. I am my story. At this stage, identity becomes more subtle. It is no longer based on body, emotion, or action. It becomes based on interpretation. I am the kind of person who, I always do this. This is just who I am. Here, identity becomes a story. But we can examine something very simple. A thought appears saying I am X. What is aware of that thought? You cannot be both. Asterisk the thought, and asterisk the awareness of the thought. So, which are you directly experiencing? You are not experiencing yourself as a finished story. You are experiencing thoughts appearing as a story, and even the idea this is who I am is itself another thought appearing now. Notice carefully, the story changes, interpretations change, self-image changes, but awareness of all of it does not appear as a story. This reveals a key point. You are not inside the story. The story is appearing inside awareness. So the question becomes, if every version of me is a thought appearing and disappearing, what remains consistent enough to even know that the story is changing? That consistency is not another story. It is the simple fact of awareness itself. Chapter 10. The doctor disappears. What remains when nothing is being claimed? On the 10th day, no new patients arrive, or at least, none are announced. The clinic feels the same as always: quiet chairs, soft light, still air, but something subtle has shifted in its atmosphere. It is less like a place where people come for answers, and more like a place where answers are no longer needed. The doctor is already seated, waiting, not for anyone in particular, but for whatever is still believed to be missing. The first patient enters without urgency, but something is different now. They sit down and say nothing for a while. Then finally, "Doctor, I don't think I am anything anymore." The doctor looks up gently, and the one who notices that. The doctor asks, a long pause. "That's the problem." The patient replies softly, "I can't find it as anything specific. Not a body, not a feeling, not a thought, not even a role. Every time I try to point to it, it disappears into just awareness of pointing." The doctor nods slowly. "Yes," the doctor says. Silence expands in the room, not as emptiness, but as clarity without objects. Another presence enters. "I used to think I was many things," they say. "An object, a feeling, a machine, a story, even a problem to solve. But now, all of that just appears, and I don't know what I am behind it." The doctor leans back slightly. "And what is it that knows all of that appearing?" the doctor asks. The patient does not answer quickly this time, not because they are confused, but because anything they might say feels like another appearance. After a while, they say quietly, "It's not something I can hold." The doctor smiles faintly, and yet, the doctor replies, "It is here." A pause, because that is the paradox no earlier chapter fully resolved. Everything that was once taken as identity object, animal, machine, emotion, thought has been seen as something appearing, but the seeing itself has never appeared as an object. The doctor stands and walks slowly to the window. Outside, nothing unusual. Life continues, movement continues, sound continues, but inside the clinic, something is no longer being added to experience. No new identity is being formed. No final conclusion is being reached. The doctor speaks softly, almost as if thinking aloud. "At no point," the doctor says, "has awareness ever been missing from this room." A pause. "Only assumptions about what it is have been appearing." The patient listens, and if every assumption is seen, the doctor continues, then what remains? No answer is required, because the question is not pointing to a concept. It is pointing to what is already present. Another silence. But this time, it is not waiting for resolution. It is not trying to become anything. It is simply not resisting what is. The doctor returns to the desk and looks at the empty chair. For the first time, there is no sense that anything needs to be corrected, because nothing was ever truly broken, only identified, and identification, once seen clearly, begins to lose its grip not through effort, but through understanding. The final presence in the room speaks quietly. "If I am not what I thought I was, then what am I supposed to become?" The doctor answers without hesitation. "Nothing," the doctor says gently. A pause, because what you are is not something that becomes. Silence deepens. Not as absence, but as recognition without language. And in that recognition, something subtle is noticed. The doctor, the patient, the story, the search, the confusion, the clarity, all of it is appearing, but none of it is holding what is aware of it. Before the clinic closes, there is one final realization that does not arrive as thought, but as quiet seeing. There was never a doctor here fixing patients, only awareness appearing as doctor, and awareness appearing as patients, and awareness appearing as the search to understand itself. Nothing has been added, nothing has been removed, only believed identities have been seen as appearances, and what remains cannot be described as anything at all, because it is not a thing. It is the knowing of things. And as the final silence settles, even the idea of chapter feels unnecessary, because nothing is continuing, nothing is ending. There is only what has always been here, not as something known, but as the knowing itself. Conclusion, the prescription that was never needed. If you have reached this point, something subtle may have already happened without announcement, not a conclusion in the usual sense, not a final answer, but a soft loosening of the assumption that there was ever a fixed you standing, apart from life, trying to understand it. Throughout this journey, we spoke in a clinic of strange identities: an apple, a bridge, a calculator, a dog, a machine, a storm, a thought, a split mind, a joke. At first, these seemed like errors in perception, humor, imagination, confusion. But slowly, something else became visible. Each identity had one thing in common. It was something that could be observed. A thought could be observed. A feeling could be observed. A body could be observed. Even the sense of I could be observed appearing and disappearing. And yet, in every moment of observation, one thing remained unchanged: the knowing of it. Not a thought, not a role, not a sensation, but the simple fact that experience is being known at all. This was the quiet thread running through every chapter. The doctor was never a character meant to fix anything. It was only a pointer, like a finger directing attention not toward more content, but toward the space in which all content appears, and that space was never damaged, never divided, never needing correction. What we called patience were not broken minds. They were moments of identity being believed in, and what we called healing was not becoming something new. It was noticing what was never actually missing. You were not asked to reject thoughts. You were not asked to suppress emotions. You were not asked to escape life. You were only invited to see clearly. Everything that can be known is changing, but the knowing of it is not. That is the quiet revolution this clinic points toward, not transformation. Recognition. And recognition does not arrive as something new. It is already here, beneath every attempt to define it. So, if there is a final prescription from this clinic, it is not a technique, belief, or practice. It is simply this: notice what is aware, not as an idea, not as a spiritual achievement, but as the most ordinary fact of your present experience. Sounds appear, thoughts appear, emotions appear, and something is already aware of all of it, without effort, without location, without identity, even now. And that awareness is not something you have. It is not something you become. It is what remains when everything you thought you were is seen as passing. So, the final joke of the clinic is also its deepest truth. You came looking for a cure for the self, and discovered there was never a patient. Separate from awareness in the first place. Nothing needs to be fixed. Nothing needs to be added. Only noticed. And in that noticing, the search quietly dissolves, not because it failed, but because it is no longer necessary. What remains is not a better version of you, not a perfected identity, not a final state. Just this: simple, unclaimed, present, aware. And that, perhaps, was the entire point all along.